Today's episode of the InsideEVs Podcast is brought to you by E-Range EV Tire. E-Range EV tires are specifically engineered for electric vehicles. Using an advanced manufacturing process called liquid phase mixing, E-Range EV's EcoPoint 3 technology creates a tire with lower rolling resistance and longer range, while offering low levels of wear and high grip. All this while staying affordable. Go to erangetires.com. That's ERANGE tires.com to find your EV's next set of tires.
Hello, friends. Welcome to the InsideEVs Podcast. It's been a busy week. There's lots to talk about. And to talk about it, we have the lovely Miss Go Electric, Lacey. Hi, Lacey.
Hello, everyone.
How you doing?
Very good. I'm excited for this week. Lots to talk about.
Lots to talk about. And someone who has something very specific about batteries to talk about in a bit. Lovely Hazel Southwell. Hi, Hazel.
Hello. Yeah, I'll try and not bore everyone. I'll go off on one for 11 minutes straight about British politics.
Oh, go on. It's fun here on Normal Island. And as ever, when I'm here, I am your host, Alex Goy, here to ask questions and try and understand what Hazel is saying half the time while she twirls her evil mustache. But let us begin with some news.
EV news.
Right, there's quite a bit of interesting stuff to talk about this week, as there is every week, of course. But Kia has announced pricing for the EV9. It said it's going to kick off at just shy of $55,000 for the rear-wheel drive car. That means 215 horsepower, 258 pound-feet, 223-mile range. What do we think? What do we think of the EV9? What do we think of the price point, especially? Because that seems quite keen to me.
It's very large.
It is large, yes.
The car, not the price.
Go ahead, Hazel.
That was basically my entire comment. You are getting a lot of car. If you are going for car or car by volume per dollar, then I think this one probably works out quite efficiently compared to most EVs on the market.
I'm super excited for this because I actually saw it at the New York Auto Show. What was that, in April? And I got to spend some time in it, around it. I love the size of it. I'm a really big fan of a boxy shape design, although it may not be the most efficient as far as aerodynamics goes. But what I think is important is that this segment, we have very limited options for a 3-row, close to full size, in between kind of that mid-range to full size SUV category. Of course, there's the R1S by Rivian out there, but higher price tag. So this is really more of the economical brands that are offering this. And I think that's super crucial because consider this competes with, instead of a traditional EV that I would A/B it against, more of a Ford Explorer or even a Toyota Highlander. Those might be Explorer's pretty close in size to this, I would say, especially the feeling that you get inside when you're sitting in that third row and overall layout, I would say. But maybe a Highlander is a little bit bigger, but there are just so many people that I've talked to that want a third row SUV and they want to go electric, but some of the ones that are on the market now are unattainable, like the R1S. So I'm excited for this, and I do think that price point is rather competitive because when you look at an Explorer, of course, if you get up to the fully loaded area, people usually don't option for a base model. So I think some people will probably get this in the 60s, maybe even low 60s, mid 60s range, as what might be the more popular trim to sell. And, you can get into the 50s and stuff in the Explorer and the Highlander. So I do think that this is a good option for the marketplace, and that they'll run with it for a little bit until, other competitors in this space come out, like GM and Ford is supposed to come out with an Explorer version as well.
You spent time with it. You spent time in it. I've been nowhere near it. I've just seen the pictures. I gotta say, I do love the look. Yes, it is a giant stylized future brick, but it's a really cool stylized future brick. It strikes it has proper presence, at least from what I've seen. What I'm curious is, with the from a sort of practicality switchgear point of view, how much time did you spend with that? What did you play with? Was it easy? Was it like the 6 in that respect, or have they done anything jazzy to it?
It's very similar. Now as far as software goes, so there were a lot of very similar screens that I saw that is in the Kia lineup in general, or even Hyundai. They're kind of the same in a lot of regards. As far as the data you get, as far as like the layout, I think that they need to work on that software. I think it's not as intuitive as it should be, but generally speaking, it's good. They had a couple of extra buttons in there that didn't make it to some of the other products, but nothing that was like too standoutish that's like unique to that product that I can remember off the top of my head. And as far as like the second row, I felt like that was a very practical area, because in the second row, those seats, you can get the option to like spin them all the way around, which I think is
You mean you can have spinny chairs on the
spinny
highway?
chairs, yes.
Yes, spinny chairs are the best.
And there's a lot of storage capability too, because that console on the bottom of it, when you're in the second row, you can slide it out. So and you can like take it out completely if you want to, but there's quite a bit of storage back there too.
When you're talking about the software, Lacey, is that like talking about? Obviously, I appreciate that this was static at an auto show, so like there's a limit to kind of, but just in terms of the general kind of like non-premiumness or like not quite a seamlessness.
I think they
nature
struggle
of like the Hyundai Kia, is that in terms of things like Apple CarPlay and kind of like those plugins, the kind of I appreciate that like Maps is not per se infotainment or like that's
yes.
does have a significant driving function, even if I've never owned a car with GPS, but like, is it in that integration aspect rather than anything to do with like the driving functions?
Correct. Yeah. So I think more of like the infotainment layout. Like if you are using Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, like I don't think you need to worry too much. But generally speaking, it's a little hard to find certain menus in their systems, I find. I don't know if anyone in the comments has their opinion that they want to share about this. But yeah, Steve, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto is going to solve a lot of the problems. I still would like to see, an easier access to menus that I'm looking for, as far as when I'm trying to find things for efficiency or adjust my charging, like the amperage or whatnot, those types of things. Sometimes they can be very confusing to find. And of course, you'll learn it once you own the vehicle and things like that. But I do think that especially EVs need to have more user-friendly, intuitive, easy access buttons to very simply get to where you need to go. Or if you're not going to have that, like directives from the car that help you with that kind of stuff, because it is such a learning curve already to get into an EV. And I do think that this is the type of car, when you reach the lower price points, you're going to have more mass market people coming in that don't, you don't want to create a frustrating experience. Otherwise, I think specs it's pretty good. Like I said, it's a little underpowered for like the single motor variant, but they had to get to that low end price point. So I kind of get it.
Just on the brick thing, sorry, you just reminded me whilst you were saying about the specs. I just checked, and the CD, the drag coefficient, is actually 0.28, which isn't bad at all. Actually, that's only 0.02 more than the BMW iX. Like,
so
that's
it's a
pretty good for a
slippery
car
brick.
that big. Yeah.
And even like the Nissan Ariya is like 0.3. So, and you would think looking at that it would be more drag efficient. But yeah, very interesting, right?
Very.
But I think NACS is a big deal. Unfortunately, right at the stage of their launch, they're not going to get the 7,500 tax credit because it's not going to be built here initially, but it eventually will be built in Georgia, I believe, if I remember that correctly.
Yeah, so it's so the initial cars are from South Korea, which so you don't get. So why are people going to buy it? Why do they just wait until they can get a big chunk of money off, unless Kia's just going to absorb that cost?
But some people, because it depends if you qualify for these tax credits as well, because it is tax credits, and so you might just be like, well, actually, I'll take a $55,000 car that is going to turn up over one that might sit in a lot for a long time, or like, you know, the comparative products that are from like US based manufacturers, it like you might be paying a lot more anyway. So also we will be paying a lot more in the UK because to my knowledge a pound is still worth more than $1, and apparently it's 64,000 here. So
so I've had questions like that before. I think it was the Volvo EX90. I was asking how it starts at so much less over there than it does here. We get
because they're not going to sell any here, is it?
Well, true, but it's things like set of VAT and nonsense like that that we get properly hammered on, because it's the price plus 20%, plus other taxes, plus vehicle excise duty, and this and that and whatever. Anyway, our stupid tax system aside, let's hammer the UK government once more, or let's talk about another exciting new launch. So the Honda Prologue has broken cover. They're saying it's a 300-mile range, sub $50,000, 85 kilowatt-hour battery, with a little bit of back of a cigarette packet maths. I make that to be about 3.5 miles per kilowatt hour, which is pretty good efficiency-wise. It's not terrible at all. Single and dual motor. The dual motor will come with 288 horsepower, 333 pound-foot, which is a very pleasing number for me. There are a few things that are up against competition, so it won't charge, it won't take as big a charge as things like the Ioniq 5 or the VW ID4. And it looks, well, I spent this morning looking at pictures of it and I can't remember what it looks like.
It looks like a Volkswagen. It genuinely looks like a Mocha or something.
Like, it
doesn't look like a Honda at all.
And they've got the new Honda typography on the back, so they've finally joined the we're going to spell out the car's name thing.
But I don't get this. Like, you know, when they brought out the Honda E,
I do.
And everyone was like, "Wow, that's really cute," and like, it's kind of a useless car. It's actually a lot bigger than it looks. Like, whatever. But it is charming. And there are a few.
The range is terrible, and they're £40,000. So
yes, yeah.
They're not going to make a second one.
But they're so cute.
But they're really cute,
so
and
cute,
there are a few of them around where I live, and they always make me smile when I see them. They're like the extremely impractical Twingo of EVs. But they said when they brought that out, they were like, "This is our new design language. Everything is going to be kind of like evolved out of this." This is kind of where we're setting what we're going to do with EVs. At the same time, like, Honda have quite a lot to brag about in terms of electrification and stuff at the moment. Like, they are smashing Formula One World Championships back to back at the moment. Like, just closed up another constructors, and okay, yes, there's some kind of like question about whether who's badging what, but it is a Honda powertrain. And like, this is very boring. This looks like there's a. It's very boring. What is this? It's under spec'd as well. Like, yes. How can you have something that is competing with the Ioniq 5 came out like 2 years ago? How can you take this long when you pulled yourself out of Formula One, sort of, to specifically focus on electrification, and this is what you come up with?
I honestly, like, I'm going to play devil's advocate here. I actually really love this. And the main reason why is you're right, that it's under spec'd. And it's kind of interesting because it is on the Ultium platform. So it is going to be a basically similar to the Blazer. There's a lot of things that they'll be carried over. But what I love so much about this is that it looks like a conventional car. You cannot tell that it's an EV. Obviously, it has that like front grille area that's like a smooth surface. But when I look at this, I'm like, that just looks like a car. And I think that is so important for mass adoption. Now, I get it. It's mid 40s to higher 40s as far as where the starting price is going to be. And I'm wondering, it's kind of interesting that, the Blazer gets 190 kilowatts for the DC fast charging peak rate, but this will get 155. So I'd be curious to wonder as to how that all played out, if that's like something that interferes with the engineering side of things, or if that was like an agreement with GM or what. But I am excited about this because I think Google built-in is a big deal. I love that system in the Polestar vehicles and the Volvo vehicles. I think it works great. But I just like that it doesn't look weird. Like a lot of these EVs, I just like, stop making them look weird. Just make them look like regular cars. And I think that a lot of normal people will buy them because of that. And also, just to your point, Honda should have been further ahead in the EV space and developing EVs. They clearly needed to get something out that fit this market much quicker, so they're getting GM's help for it. But I think it's a decent option considering. Yes, I would like better specs, but overall, I just think it's going to be really good for the normal person, or even just the Honda loyalist that wants to go electric in this category. That's my take.
I think
probably not a popular take, but
that makes perfect sense, because I can see this being like the car that all of a sudden populates suburban whereverville, and it's like we have our little car, we have our anonymous Honda, and we go from A to B, and it's kind of, it looks to me like the definition of a car, which, to your point, Lacey, that's kind of exactly what you want. I also reckon, because it's so incredibly anonymous and quite yawn-worthy to look at, it will be adopted by police forces up and down the land. Because it's like, oh, look at that anonymous box of a car. Excellent. Why is it? Why? Oh, it's got lights. Oh, no, I'm in trouble now. I'm going to...
BMW are going to be shaking in their boots, because like it's normally their...
Well, they're
over here.
Vehicles.
Well, their motors have been pulled from our police forces because they kept braking. But that's an internal combustion engine problem. No place on this podcast. What the people these Hondas will may be catching, wait for the smooth segue, friends, will be people not paying attention and being on their phones while they're driving, unless, of course, they're in a new Mercedes S-Class or EQS equipped with Drive Pilot, the level 3 system that means you don't have to pay any attention to what's going on around you. Kind of, you can do hands off, eyes off. The car will do everything. Now, the tech associated with this thing, it's got LiDAR, it's got smart GPS, it's got microphones to monitor sound around you. It has moisture sensors in the wheels. In the wheel arches, so it can tell if it's dry, because the system can only work when it's dry and it's light, and it's geo-fenced, so it's only usable in certain areas. While it's in operation, you can play games, you can watch YouTube, you can just not pay attention to it. The downside, or the comparative downside, so if you have a car with all this equipped, it is a subscription thing, so you have to pay $2,500 US a year for it, which seems oddly wasteful when all the tech's on board. But it's the same with Blue Cruise over here. You have to pay like 20 quid a month or something, and that's it used to be that in the US, didn't it? And then it went up massively. What do we think, gang? What do we think of the tech? What do we think of the price? And do we think people are actually going to use it? Do you think they'll go for it, or what?
I don't mind the pricing, actually. So I'll get into what I mind about the tech later, but like actually for something that does need continuous maintenance and software updates, then either it should be a quite like a hefty one-off price, or actually I don't think that's terrible for kind of like is it good value given all the geofencing, etc.? Like, is it practical as a purchase? I don't know. But I don't think for something that does need a considerable amount of maintenance by companies that are supplying it, that's a particularly terrible price to be paying. And I do, to be honest, I would be a lot more suspicious about anything that was trying to offer a genuinely kind of like eyes off level 3 driver assist program. Well, it's not even driver assist, is like that is promising some level of actual self-driving. If there wasn't some maintenance program associated with it, because otherwise it's going to be a security nightmare. And any new road regulations, any new adjustments, whatever, like those all have to be factored in.
Lacey, what do you reckon?
I have mixed feelings about this, because I like the fact that they have gotten approval for level 3 here in the US, although it's only in California and Nevada. Like, getting approval for that kind of stuff is a big deal. And that's just basically the starting point, I think, to then allow other manufacturers to have a path to get to that. So I do like that about this. Level 3 is kind of a tricky situation, just because, like, technically the car's in control, but you still kind of have to pay attention. So it's just like more of the liability is on the car, but not entirely. So it's kind of like this weird intersection of like blurred lines. So I think the communication as far as what's happening in the vehicle with this system needs to be extremely clear. And from what I read from a lot of the people who went out and tested this, that, it was pretty good in that regard. But what bothers me about this is that, for one, obviously you can only go up to 40 miles per hour, but you have to have a car in front of you. So it is only limited to those extremely high traffic areas, which is good for, like, say, the 405. Or I laughed because in the InsideEVs article, Brett, I'm going to call him out real quick. He's like, and then I hit the 10. I'm like, oh God, the 10, really? Like Californian stock. But it was hilarious.
What I loved about his piece, he said, "Oh yeah, so I had a great 50-minute drive in the car," and I was like, "Okay, they must have covered some distance." The whole 8 miles.
Yeah.
What? What? I mean, for a situation like LA, like, yeah, that's perfect, isn't it? It's just
exactly.
I mean, I guess that's when you want to use these, though.
Yes.
Like, especially when it's stop-start traffic and like you're just moving 6 inches or like 3 feet every 5 minutes or something, and like actually you could be doing something else. Because aside from anything else, that's when human brains, like, even if you're not looking at YouTube or something, you're like staring out the window at like a bird or something, or like getting distracted by stuff. So there is and a lot of like actual the more kind of like basic driver assist, like driver prompt things, I think are really good for those kind of situations where they're just like, wait, move, like pay attention again. But having to have a car in front of you, I mean, I have a real problem with what's being called level whatever in autonomous driving, because I don't. So this is where I get into my problems with the tech. I don't think this is level 3.
Okay.
My feeling is that having a series of hyper-specific conditions under which the driver can take their eyes off the road is not level 3. That's a driver assist, and I would put it at good level 2.
Level 2.5.
Yeah, like, but I don't personally. I think calling it level 3 is, and I do think like places like the NHTSA and you know, other bodies that regulate these things. There's an organization called ADA. Oh, sorry, my cat has appeared to shout at me.
There's a cat. Amazing. That's the best news ever.
But the ADA, the Autonomous Drivers Association, which is kind of like exists as a technological platform to represent autonomous programming on the road, which is a kind of like a quite futuristic concept, but nevertheless. And I don't think they would allow this to be classed as level 3. They would still definitely, like, basically, the driver should be responsible for what is happening in the car. And if you can trust it to do some stuff for you, that's great. But in the same way that you can trust Google Maps to tell you where to go, therefore you didn't, sit down and print out something or trace your map in an AA atlas or whatever before you left. I personally think this is an aid and not something that can be sold as level 3, because if it's so specific and the circumstances are so specific and it doesn't work in rain, how much rain?
Is it
any?
Slightly damp? Does it have to be actively raining, or is it just a slightly damp surface?
LA rain is very different from London rain, which is very different from Parisian rain, which is very different from. So it's all these different.
Yeah, and are there surfaces it won't work on? Like if you find that you're in stop-start traffic and you're now in a road surface that, supposing it's because of roadworks and you're on suddenly a concrete surface instead of a tarmac, or like vice versa. Like, is that going to confuse it? Is it going to suddenly stop working? I assume it would like ding something and say like, "Hello, help! I can't do this." But equally,
help.
I don't think you can sell this as level 3.
Well, right now, yeah, it's so limited too. Like, it's only on these mapped highways as well. So that's the other. Like, it just keeps narrowing down and narrowing down. It's like, basically, there's so many limitations to it. So it's almost like a non-story to me, to be fair. I personally
in very specific circumstances, and if you limited it to 40 miles an hour and it was in a straight line and there was a car in front of me,
no lane changing,
whatever, I could probably drive a Formula 1 car. But that doesn't mean that I am a Formula 1 driver. So I sort of,
But like, and the
someone
thing
just
is,
mentioned in the comments, slightly bored in the comments, says requiring that it follows a car sounds like they've delegated a lot of the responsibility to the human in front. True.
That's true. Yeah, I was talking about this to Tim, who's a producer on my channel, and he's like, "This is convoy technology, and this convoy technology has been out for how long?" Like,
was it the Sartre system was the first, or one of the first that required a follow vehicle, and then other vehicles behind it would basically mirror its actions, and that was, oh Lord, when was that?
I limited areas, limited highways. I do think it's good that they got the regulations to like get approval to start doing this kind of stuff. And apparently they've been doing this in Germany as far as like testing this level 3 stuff for a year or something like that, I read. But
yeah, so on testing, so I know you've had to go in level 3, you've had to go in a Waymo, right? So talk us through that. What was that like? What were the restrictions on that?
So this past week, I went to California, to San Francisco. I went to go look at an electric RV that is coming out, and I can't talk about it quite yet. It's under embargo, but I'll be excited to talk to you guys about that at the end of the month. But while I was there, I visited my friend Ryan, who is, if you guys are on Twitter, you should follow him. It's actually his birthday today. Happy birthday, Ryan.
Happy birthday, Ryan.
Yes, at the Kilowatts. And I usually go visit him because we were on the Charge Across America rally that was on NBC Sports a couple of years ago, where we won a rally taking a CCS car across the country. But anyways, so I go visit him and he's like, "Oh, I want you to have the experience because I have access to both Cruise and Waymo to called cars." And it's very restricted as well as far as the geofencing in the area. They can only go, I think it is also like 40 miles per hour, but they're both technically level 4. So there's no driver in the seat. And you cannot engage at all with the vehicle systems in regards to like.
So you can't mash the gas or
right.
steer it or anything like that. There's basically a very solid ghost driving.
Yes. And one of the reasons why I'm telling you guys to go to his Twitter is because he posted videos of our rides. Now, my first ride ever in the Cruise, we took to dinner, we took the Waymo first, and that was an I-Pace. And I was shocked about how wonderful that experience was because it got itself into a lot of tricky situations. But the thing that I like about that Waymo system is mainly the visualization on the screens. So they have a screen in the center stack as you would like a normal infotainment system, but they also have one in the back seat for the people sitting back there. I was sitting in the front seat for the first attempt that we took it to dinner, and then we also took it back from dinner as well. But on the screen, it's very similar to how Tesla visualization works, where you can see like where the car placement is. Now, they don't show you in a car shape, but they're like different rectangles or ovals and represented in size compared to what the thing is around you. So even like the bikes at nighttime, it was dark outside. It could even detect those, and every movement, like there was no like latency or lag of the visual. Like it was very good. And it got into situations where there were people like opening car doors like in front of it, and there was traffic coming in. It wasn't too aggressive, but it was the perfect amount of aggressiveness. It couldn't find a spot to pull right in front of the restaurant, but it took the side street and then pulled over in a safe. Like I was just so extremely impressed with the Waymo system. They also provide very clear descriptions and messaging in regards to what the vehicle is seeing and how it's acting. So that was great. I absolutely like have very high confidence now in Waymo, and also just the iPace was really comfortable. It was nice to like get back in one of those and just be like, oh yeah, this is actually pretty decent.
iPaces are great.
I was like, this is actually nice. Yeah, like this is like the perfect like ride hailing type situation in a comfortable, big enough vehicle, but quiet. And yeah, I was just really happy about it. And then after we took our second ride in the Waymo and got back, we're like, well, let's try the cruise now. And it was funny because we were with Ryan and his girlfriend, Corinne, and it was me and Tim. And Corinne's like, I'm out, guys. I'm not taking the cruise. Like, I'm not saying yes to death today. And we're like, okay.
We are. See you at home, friend.
We want to try it. And oh my God, it was like pretty much everything you could think go wrong went wrong. So we get in the car and we're actually like in this like mission area, and then we're going to drive to Twitter headquarters or X headquarters, let the car drive autonomously. So one big difference is that it's a Chevy Bolt, a little tighter, more smaller. It's cramped. No one can sit in the front seat. So like in the Waymo, there was no like, I could reach over to the steering wheel if I wanted. There was no like shield or anything. But in the Bolt, there was a plastic shield like in a taxi cab. So we were in the back and you can't like interact at all, which I get safety reasons why they do that. But it was just different because it felt more confined. Then, you know, we have it routing to the destination. And the visualization in the Bolt, it looks like just like Lyft or Uber, where the car is just going on the map and it shows you the line of its path. Whereas like you don't get any of the visual, like you can't see what the car is seeing in this case. So that's not as clear. But as we're driving, it rerouted us several times it didn't seem like any particular reason. Like maybe it thought it was a faster route, but it just didn't make sense as to why, because it was open. There was no traffic in front of us or anything. So it rerouted us twice. And then we go down the street and this homeless person jumps on the hood of the car and just sits on it. And he's got this all on video. Yeah, he jumps on the car. I will say about the cruise, I was really satisfied with how quickly a person got on the phone, like immediately and started talking to us. He's like, I noticed that there was a disruption, like they thought it got in an accident or something like that. Excuse me.
Well, it kind of did. A man jumped on it.
A man jumped on it, yeah. And she's like, is everything okay? And we're like, yeah, like a homeless person just jumped on the hood of the car, which brings to a greater point of like, what does happen in a situation like that? If it, like, I didn't feel threatened because I was just like, oh yeah, you know, like this is weird and funny, but I could see how someone would be like terrified of, you know, now I'm like kind of trapped in this car. You can press a button to get yourself end the trip and get out if you want to, but it did feel like, but
there's an angry man on the bonnet of your car. You don't want to be out of the metal box, keeping you away from the angry man on the bonnet of the car.
Right. So that's kind of an interesting situation. So then that happens. And then I will say the lady was very responsive and quick to find if we felt comfortable, if you know, we were safe, and to get the ride started back up. It could have been a little bit quicker as far as like driving off to get away from this guy. But, you know, overall, I think it was a pretty good response that she had. So we get going again. We get going again. That's not it.
But wait, there's more.
But wait, there's more. This is what scared me, was that we came down this road that had like 5 different forks in it. The problem is that it was coming through this intersection, and it was right in front of the Twitter building. There was a full lane that was blocked off with construction starting just after the intersection. So what happened is when we took the kind of like through the intersection, the bolt pulled right up to the sign of the construction zone, which was a trench. They were digging a trench right at that moment. There were people like out there, and we're like,
maybe it harbors secret desires to be a BART train.
Yeah, and right. I kept calling it the aggro bolt because the thing is very aggressive in comparison to the Waymo. Like, it will go fast and then it'll slow down and it'll stop. And it's like, oh my God, what's going on? But so it pulls right up to this sign, and I'm like, oh God, we are stuck in an intersection that has tram lines, and we're literally like perpendicular with it. And there's a tram coming. I'm just like, oh my God, we're stuck there for a while too. The car couldn't figure out because there's all this other traffic going through the lanes on either side, people going around us, so then the car can't move. But then it backs out of the spot eventually. But the tram is like waiting for us to like get out of the way. Eventually it gets around. It was sketchy, very anxiety, high anxiety in that situation.
Sketchy. That sounds like there's words I'd use to describe that would get me into some legal trouble.
Yeah, exactly.
That doesn't sound fun.
It finally, I'm almost done. I know this is crazy. This all happened in one ride, but this ended up pulling out, and since that construction zone was like that full lane, the car couldn't figure out where to pull over to drop us off because that was ultimately very close to our destination. Now, again, we could have pressed the button to end the trip and get out, but we wanted to see what it would do because then ultimately it was like, I can't decide where to go to drop you off, so I'm going to do another loop to try to get you back. And it's not what you think. We didn't get back to that sign and stop again. But what happened was it just then started taking us to a really random, like at first it had a circle visual of where we were going around the block. But then it started taking us further out, like 2 or 3 blocks away. And then all of a sudden it was like, you're done. Get out of the car. And we're like, what?
Yeah, hard pass. It sounded like you had a Waymo comfortable experience in the first one.
I see what you did there.
I had time to think of the pun because your story.
Yes, it was a long one. Sorry, guys.
It's absolutely fine, but it just sounds harrowing and awful. And so, yeah. Oh. So level 3.
We've all had a bad taxi ride with a human driver, right?
Yeah.
Like one way you're just this
awful
driver was like sketchy as hell, and like you know, they were being kind of erratic, and like then they dropped me off nowhere near my destination or whatever, and I'm like, yeah, well, I'm gonna leave that one a bad review on Uber or whatever.
1 star. But if when your cruise tries to turn into a submarine, no.
It was so sketchy. I was like, okay, I have lost confidence in Cruise, and now I'm a Waymo stan.
Yeah, fair. Entirely fair. I mean, it's at moments like this where I normally pipe up and go, it's still frontier tech. It's still lots to learn, but at the same time,
frontier's okay, but like don't put it on a road.
Yeah, that sounds yes. Sketchy is the legally safe word we can use to describe that. So, level 3 autonomy, yes, and also no, and yay for Waymo.
Indeed.
Let's talk about not terrifying things, about potentially a very good thing. Toyota has decided it's going to increase its EV production by a factor of 3, and it's now going to build 600,000 units in 2025. 10 new Toyota and Lexus models, EV models coming out by 26, allegedly. What do we think? Good news, bad news, cardboard box? Bearing in mind the BZ4X. Yes, I said Z this week. The BZ4X is a bit not great. Good news, what do we think?
I mean, who are they going to sell them to, and what are they going to be? Sorry, because like the BZ4X is not doing big numbers. especially not for a Toyota product, given
No,
Toyota is
not in sales
by
or
numbers
range.
the biggest car maker in the world. And like, although, yeah, I mean, like, show us the cars, like, tell us what you're making, what is this increase based on, and where's it going to be, and what are these products actually going to look like? And like, I know that we've had, the map of kind of how Toyota, and we were talking about it a couple of weeks back, how it sees batteries progressing and things, but I don't necessarily. Well, also, like, automakers are saying all kinds of numbers at the minute, and until there are actually orders in for those cars, and also deliveries that are actually happening, it's just a number. Even when it comes from Toyota, like, legacy automakers have 100% got in on the kind of just say stuff game at the minute.
Well, it's where it works for others. Why can't it work for them? Lacey, what do you reckon? What's your thought on this?
I completely agree with you. Like, it is important because Toyota is such a high volume. They make the most cars amongst all the automakers. So it is important for them to like ramp up to get more EVs on the road. But if it's going to be a BZ4X type, like, no, they need to really step up the game as far as engineering goes and make a good, like, viable product for these people that are going to be buying them. But it is kind of like same thing. I'm sick of hearing like, oh yeah, we're going to be doing this and this and this. All right, let's see it, because we have had a lot of that from GM too, where they said, we're going to build all these EVs. We're going to be, and they're struggling so hard to get the production volumes up. So I'll believe it when I see it.
And that sounds perfectly fair. Now, speaking of GM, time for another super slick segue. Speaking of GM, the Silverado EV has towed a thing. It's towed a £6,500 trailer for more than 200 miles, a little over. It was some road testers from, I've got it in my notes, somewhere, Fastlane Truck did a twin with Silverado EV and a V6 Ford F-150. The Silverado has a claimed 450-mile range, 515 horsepower, 600 pound-foot, so quite a chunky thing. No firm battery size, though. I think the theory at the moment is the same as the ludicrously large Hummer EV, which is obviously doing incredibly well, and everyone loves the look of. This is a uniquely American thing, I think, because in the UK we don't have big towing tests. We have Caravan of the Year awards, which Bentley proudly won one of recently, if memory serves. So, Lacey, I'm going to defer to your greater local knowledge on this one.
Hyper local too, because actually I see these driving around a lot where I'm at. I'm in the Metro Detroit area, and of course GM's based here, so I'm lucky where I get to, car spot them quite frequently, especially lately. I think it is important in a sense that there are still a lot of people in this market that will not consider getting an electric truck because they still are like, I can't do it because I have to tow whatever. And the reality is like, it's because it's an inconvenience. Like, you can do it. It's just going to be a lot less of a range hit. But I do think that these numbers are fair because would they say like 200 miles towing is what they achieved with this particular setup. And I think for a lot of people that will be okay. But again, they're doing it with such a huge battery pack, so that bothers me. But ultimately, there are some people that they don't want to get an electric truck because they think they can't charge, like, especially with such a hit on range. So although I think it's good, it's nice to see. Obviously you'll hear me beat this drum forever, is I like to see efficiency, not such big packs, but that's why I'm also kind of excited to share in a couple of weeks about this electric RV stuff, because I've already gone and looked at one, and that technology is crucial because if you can get a powertrain on that to reduce the impact of your range on, the vehicle that's towing, it's a win-win situation. So, but not it's not practical in all use cases quite yet. But I hope that technology really boosts up so that more people can enter into that space comfortably.
So we like it, but we wish it was more efficient, essentially. Yeah.
But
Cool.
200 miles is not bad for what it is,
200 miles. 200 miles is good, right? From the kind of ridiculous, because it's not a thing we have over here, to the definitely ridiculous, the David Brown Automotive Mini Emastered. It was announced this week. It's from a company called David Brown Automotive. No relation to the DB or the David Brown from Aston Martin. It's a different David Brown. He's a businessman from the north. He used to do earth movers, and then as he got a little older, he decided he wanted to do classic cars. They released a thing called the Speedback. I think it's a Jag XK8 convertible made to look like an Aston DB5. And now David Brown Automotive does minis. It's been doing minis for a few years. It takes basically an old Mini, manual or automatic, sticks a new body shell on it, makes it perfect, and charges around £100,000 for them. But you can do anything you want to them. You get CarPlay, blah, blah, blah. This is obviously an ultra high net worth, ultra luxe product, and it's just come out with the Mini Emastered. So you get all the funkiness that you get from a David Brown Automotive Mini Remastered, which is what their official name is, but now it's electric. It weighs 640 kilos, that's 1,411 pounds-ish. It's got an 18.8 kilowatt hour battery, 98 horsepower motor, 129 pound-foot, 0 to 62 in 8.5 seconds. It'll do 92 miles an hour. They say it'll get 110 miles out of a charge. It is £125,000, which, given how strong the pound is right now, that's about anywhere between $4,000 and $110,000. More, no, $400,000 and $200,000. So it could be anything. But yeah, I kind of like it. There are a few mini resto mods going around. I know Electrogenic does a plug-in kit where you can just buy it. I think it's like £15,000. You buy the kit from them, send it to your local spanner man, and he'll install it for you. But that's without any restoration. I've driven a few of the ICE, pardon me, driven a few of the ICE David Brown minis. The fit and finish and the quality of these things, like the leatherwork, the paint, the trim, how the way they've made everything work, it's lovely. It's gorgeous. Is it worth $100,000? But you do get your car. With an EV, as an EV, it kind of makes sense to me. As an ultra luxe, like, I want a toy to get around town in and don't want to get done by the ULEZ, so I can't have an actual mini. It kind of works for me, but again, it's £125,000, which is a lot of money. What do we think, gang? What's your take on it, apart from aghastness at the price?
I mean, I wouldn't spend 10 grand on a Chanel handbag either, but there's plenty of people who do. And like, or there's certainly a market for them. So like, yeah, if you're looking to drop money on something super cute, and there are plenty of people who are, then yeah, this is a super cute car. It's obviously done really nicely. It's worth 5 times my annual wage or whatever, but like, the only thing I really don't like, and I know I whinged about this the other day, but people have to stop putting leather in electric cars. It's really annoying. Like, it's not a sustainable product, and although I'm
green, I'm eco, I'm saving the planet, I peeled a cow to sit on.
Yeah, like this has to stop as a silly little luxury indulgence. And like, although this is obviously a super bespoke maker, and we're not talking about large volume leather, like, the increasing appetite for leather in the automotive industry is driving destruction. So but like, those kind of quibbles aside, it's really nice. And if I was a rich person in my indolent when I finally just become a wag or something, then I try this.
I'd have one of those.
Yeah.
Lacey, what do you think? What's your take on it?
Well, my God, that is quite the difference between the Chevy Silverado EV. That's probably like 1.5 Alex Goys. If we're metric Goys, we're measuring once again. But I love it. It's exquisite. I think this is so stunning. The price obviously it hurts the heart, but yeah, one day maybe.
One day.
I gotta start saving.
We're going to have a little bit more on it next week because they're unveiling it formally at some swanky do in town, and so Hazel and I are going to put on our finest clothes, and I might even wash under my nails, and we're going to go and have a look and pick it apart and have a lovely time. So we'll have a bit of a hands-on of that next week. Before we leap to,
we can measure it in actual metric Goys.
We can measure it in actual metric Goys.
Please do.
Free dumb units, we should call them.
I can't wait to see those pictures on Twitter or X or whatever.
I'll take my proper camera and everything. Before we move on to the kind of the little dribble of Tesla news that we had this week, Hazel has something to say about batteries. What has been playing on your mind this week?
So this is something so it's actually a couple of weeks old, this bit of news, but I spoke to the guys from this company because I thought it was something that was worth it was interesting enough, and I wanted to kind of look into how genuine it was, basically. So as we've previously had on the podcast, there is obviously a reasonable amount of healthy cynicism around the development of solid state batteries for electric vehicles. It's something that has consistently been 5 to 6 years off for a long time. And Toyota, a couple of weeks back, we were talking about Toyota's battery plan to have solid state packs by 2028. Now, this is interesting because a company that Toyota have invested in, Ion, all in capital letters, to try and differentiate itself from the many ions in the battery space generally, or charging space, is a company that makes hyper bespoke packs at the moment. So at the moment, it's making solid state packs using its ceramic electrolyte. So it's still a lithium ion battery. It's just that rather than a liquid electrolyte, it's a ceramic electrolyte. That's true of all solid state batteries, or the solid state batteries that we're kind of talking about at the minute. It's a proprietary electrolyte that doesn't use some of the more harmful things like nickel. So it's LLZO, which is lithium lanthanum zinc oxide, which nobody needs to know all of the other numbers involved. But it's a clever electrolyte. It negates quite a lot of the problems from other batteries, and it's got high stability, high cycling, etc. It still needs development. So these guys are talking about getting to 2028 and having genuine large-scale production for this. So what they're trying to get to is, although they can make packs at the moment, they're in prototype stage. They're mostly going into military applications at the moment. They seem to have quite a lot of defense contracts, which is certainly a way to make money. I don't love it. I can't pretend that I'm on board with the military industrial complex, but it is a way to fund this stuff. And they are looking to build this out with the production and supply chain and factory plan by 2028, which obviously does fit to Toyota's plan. So this is exciting because of the direct link, and also because they're not chatting rubbish. This is something that's sensible, and partly because it's 2023, they are 5 years out from that production deadline, and they've just partnered with Saint-Gobain, which is or Saint-Gobain, depending on how you want to pronounce it, which is one of the biggest ceramic makers in the world. And like ceramics sounds like lovely pottery and whatever, but obviously covers a huge amount of things, including cement. Actually, the ceramics industry is super toxic, but like, yeah, there's a reason to believe that this is interesting, partly because of the chemistry. It does sound very promising, and partly because this isn't just we'll somehow do solid state. It's like, here's how we're going to do it and who we're going to do it with.
Mhm.
So a bit of positivity on the solid state front rather than the rightful cynicism that we often have.
Hooray! Love it when that happens. That
truly 5 years out, like legit.
Well,
this time.
someone, Carl in San Diego in the comments said, when you need 5 years to get there, it means you have no idea how you're going to do it. There is no industrialization that needs that lead time. Can I introduce you to engine development? But ho-hum. No, that's genuinely good news. So that neatly rounds off the normal news. And now it is time for Tesla news. Tesla news. Tesla news. Love a bit of Tesla news. There are 3 stories this week, and they aren't major ones, but they are definitely worth talking about. The first is that there has been drone footage of a Tesla Cybertruck manufacturing candidate. What this essentially shows us is that there is a car that exists in the plant, and they're probably going to start building them soon, allegedly, hopefully, maybe. It looks cool. It looks like an car. It looks like a ridiculous car because the Cybertruck is a ludicrous shape. And yeah,
How embarrassing! Its clothes have fallen off. It's got like a tarpaulin for the audio listeners. It's got like a tarpaulin that's like scronkled on the floor next to it.
It looks like it's been there for a while.
Yeah, it was the morning after a storm, and yeah. So it basically the car looks vaguely finished. This is a pre-prod still, but it's the next step up. Are we excited? Do we think it's going to? Do we actually think this is what it is, or is this someone just getting very excited?
I don't know. I kind of think that legit, it's getting close. Like this guy that flies this drone over at Giga Texas, Joe Tegmeyer, I think that's how you say it. He flies like 3 times a week, and he's seen quite a few things that indicate that they're getting pretty close to making this happen. And I did see like some people post on Facebook some images of apparel that said Cybertruck launch team on it, as if the delivery event is going to be happening relatively soon. But I don't know. I'm still kind of standing by the fact that I think maybe they'll have the delivery event within the next month or so. But even so, they'll probably do first deliveries of their trucks to employees. So real customers, I still think, might not get their cars until 2024.
Yep.
But I hope I'm wrong. But I that's just what I'm kind of predicting. But I'm excited. I like to see it.
I'm just happy that after all the wait and all the bluster and all the unfulfilled promises, obviously it's not my jam. I'm a weird Brit. There are no uses for pickup trucks for the vast majority of people in this country. Those that do need them, buy them, but there aren't many on sale. It's not a huge industry. So it's like the concept of having a truck here kind of it confuses me. But after all the bluster, the fact that it's actually as close as it is, that is pretty cool.
It's also real close to that charging point. I know we mentioned this the other week, but
it has to be the where it's like on the wheel well where the charging port is. Yeah. So I don't know. Tesla needs to do some, get more V4 out there, like maybe replace the cables so they're longer cables, because also with the introduction of the NACS connectors for a lot of new automakers, the positioning is going to mess up a lot of the parking and all that. So
it's
the
very
cable is
Hollow,
like tensioned, like
stretched.
It's for a freaking cable car or something. Ugh.
Yep.
Oh, I don't like that at all.
To that point, a lot of new Magic Dock stations are getting put in. Like recently, like a huge amount of them are starting to deploy again because they had paused it for a little while. And I've been seeing some Navi news about Tesla winning quite a few of the NEVI bids that they've put out for. So that's also, a couple good signs that some states are approving them for some stations, and more Magic Docks. So more vehicles like the Hyundais that are, the Hyundais that haven't switched over to commit to NACS, they'll be able to charge on those too, which is good to hear. Although with 800 volt, not as good as some of the 400 volt vehicles, as we've noticed.
A quick comment, quick one for the comment. Steve B, you don't want these barreling down low visibility country lanes, Alex. No, Range Rovers are bad enough. Though I'm not entirely sure these would fit on a British B road, but it's all good. Speaking of Cybertrucks, Elon Musk, the man who builds and sells the Cybertruck, has said he's driven the performance version of the car he builds and sells, and he says it's quite good. It does mean there's a fast one coming, or a faster one coming. It means that the man who stands to make a lot of money out of selling them likes them. He says it kicks ass to the next level, which is a beautiful bit of it's a beautifully articulate bit of. I think we lost Hazel. The twirling is
like firing, like cartoonishly firing people a story up.
Yeah, it's for a man who owns a social network and he's encouraging people to talk and share their thoughts. His thoughts can be a little bit. We're being snobbish. I'm being snobbish, but it kicks ass to the next level. But it does mean there's a quicker Cybertruck coming. So I wonder what'll happen. I wonder whether people who'll have the first one and then go, oh, right, well, now I want the performance one. And there'll be this big groundswell of early build Cybertrucks coming out to be picked up for a song on the used market.
Lacey, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I don't feel like the market for pickup trucks is particularly looking for a performance kind of car. So I feel like a performance Cybertruck would be almost exclusively for I don't know, setting a lap of the Nordschleifer as the fastest pickup to ever do it, or some I don't know. Am I wrong?
Yes and no. I will say Raptor it's not all that popular, but to me, it's Tesla is doing something so different that I think they can carve their own lane, especially with this thing looking so bizarre. But I think that he continues to want to beat the drum of I want to make the fastest car. I want to make the fastest truck. And so if he's got to compete against Watts to Freedom or something like that, where that thing goes 3 seconds for the Hummer EV or the Silverado EV, he's going to want to challenge that. So naturally, I think that he just wants to be the best at those types of things. It might not be the most practical thing, but I think the Tesla community really likes that. And ultimately, I don't think this is the traditional truck buyer that's buying this, which is weird to say, but there will be a little bit of that, I guess. It's just such a weird avenue that they're taking, but they're kind of carving their own lane in some regards. So I think a lot of people will go for a performance version just because this is already ridiculous as it is. And if they can be competitive on price, why not? Also, good news, guys. I just got confirmation for my configuration for the Rivian R1T, so it looks like I'm actually maybe going to actually get this truck for once. And I actually selected the performance variant of the dual motor, and it was only $2,500 extra to opt for that, which is why I picked it. But
when you're paying that much money, an extra $2,500 doesn't matter, I guess. It's well, it's the so why not do it? That sounds great. I am jealous because we can't have those. But...
Yes. So I don't know. I opted for it, but we'll see. We'll see what the market holds. I think that it doesn't matter anyways because they're just going to sell all of them that they're going to make anyway.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I guess a dual motor, if you're talking about a performance edition as a dual motor edition, I can totally see that. Because, it does, especially if you're going to take it anywhere off-road or something, there's a lot more kind of opportunities for something like that. And some of the Rivians excitingness is that it's cooler off-roading and things.
Well, in the Cybertruck, they did initially say, now I don't know if this is, no one knows what's going to come out
Has
first.
anyone
as far
seen
as,
a Cybertruck off-road?
I'm just going to have a quick look at Google.
Yeah, I don't know. Good question. In the comments, let us know if you guys have. But initially, they had offered 3 different powertrain variants as far as like electric motors: a single motor, a dual motor, or a tri-motor. So the tri-motor, and they said that you could potentially get up to 500 miles of range. To me, people will opt for performance if, you know, it means that they're not compromising all too much on range. So I think that might be, you know, the perfect storm as far as a configuration for people to actually be like, okay, yes. Because typically we see with EVs that they offer a performance variant or something that has higher power, then you have a good chunk of range that goes out the door. So I think they could get away with it based on the amount of range that ends up coming out, but we'll see what actually is available.
I've just had a quick bit of Google foo. It has been spotted off road. There's some spy video of it being removed, put onto a truck post off roading. They also, oh yes, they also. I haven't had, you know, I've only had like 30 seconds to have a look. But they also, if you remember, a few weeks ago, they did drive it up the small hill outside Tesla HQ and park it there.
They're supposed to be building an ecological paradise. I'm hoping that that's like kind of the under construction type thing, because Tim has a Cybertruck on order, and we wanted to be able to do the delivery at the factory, which, you know, dreams maybe won't come true, but if they do have this like ecological paradise like park where you can like take it off road and stuff, that'd be so cool. But yeah, looks like it's going to take a while to get that all done.
Little bit. So while we ponder the actual capability of a Cybertruck, there's one more kind of Tesla story we're going to talk about this week. The Grand Admiral of Tesla, Elon Musk, he has said he has some thoughts on the UAW strikes. Unsurprisingly, he's not a fan. Hazel, I believe you've been pondering this one this week. So I'm just going to pull the cord, step away gently, and watch you go. What do you make of it?
I mean, I think that of course people are interested in what Elon Musk says about legacy automakers and in terms of the way that they conduct themselves and the way that they conduct their business. I don't think that someone who is notoriously indie. Sorry. I don't think that someone who is notoriously anti-union and there's a long history of strike breaking and union breaking in Tesla factories, and to Tesla's opposition to things like incentives being conditional on union membership. There's also other automakers who are in the same boat. I would like to say this isn't uniquely a Tesla thing, but him saying that the demands of the UAW, which may be unreasonable, but equally they're sitting a negotiation line and kind of trying to work to it. And I understand that they are trying to protect their members and their members' interests during a huge time of flux in the auto industry. And also that the big three have really stuffed this one up, because there was an incredible story last week about they couldn't work out which plants were going to strike and took parts from plants that weren't striking to plants that were striking, effectively putting more plants on strike and things, which it just unbelievable. So I would not say that this is strike that's being adeptly handled by the automakers. It's probably maybe not being politically handled particularly well by the union either. Elon Musk saying that workers demanding 40% and a 32-hour week is going to bankrupt a load of automakers. Well, he says a lot of things that affect people's share prices, not least Tesla's. And
True.
I mean, it's to the point that I would actually say I'm not entirely sure. I don't consider that slight meddling. Like if I was the FCA, I might be a little bit interested in that as a comment. And what basis it was on.
Carl in San Diego in the comments has just said, "Shall we listen to the world's richest man about fair pay?" Yes.
Well, yes, exactly. That's yeah. This is the thing. Like, was it Grimes was pictured reading the Communist Manifesto after they broke up, or whatever it was. Yeah, I think I understand why people are interested in what he says, but what he says is not interesting.
Lacey, have you got anything to add to that?
Well, I will say that I somewhat agree with him, but Hazel, like, you are on the money about like him being allowed to say this stuff. Like, is someone going to be like technically with his position, he's not supposed to say certain things. And this is a very borderline thing for him to say and get in trouble, like legally. So it's kind of interesting, but not surprising at the same time, because he says a lot of this kind of stuff all the time. As it stands, with the amount of money that the UAW is asking for, it seems like it is too much for what they want, but I do understand why they're asking for what they're asking for, considering previous years they're trying to kind of make up for a little bit of that. But as far as the automotive landscape goes in the United States, the foreign automakers, a lot of them, they do not have to deal with unions. They have a competitive advantage there. Tesla has a competitive advantage there, and they know that. It's not to say that I don't think unions have a value, but I do think it is very challenging for companies like Ford and GM and Stellantis, who have their hands tied a little bit in this case, to, obviously they have to continue ahead with the UAW. They need to come to an agreement. This is bad press. Nobody likes to see this. But there does need to be like a middle point where they can agree. And it seemed like they were progressing fairly well with Ford from what I read the last week. But then the instant Ford came out with the article about them pausing their Marshall facility in Michigan, the battery manufacturing facility, the joint venture that they had with CATL, to me, the instant I read that headline, I'm like, oh, they're talking UAW. UAW wants into that factory, and they basically just shut them down and said, no, this is not on the bargaining table because you're not going to get into our battery manufacturing facilities as well. So, and I saw someone commented about the UAW is pro-EV. I honestly only think they're pro-EV if they can get into those facilities and be like, basically take advantage of those jobs. And the automakers, they don't necessarily want to do that. Why do you think Ford also set up shop down in Tennessee? And these guys are moving down south specifically to try to get away from these like typical areas where UAW is very prominent. And so it does kind of make me nervous for the big 2.5 or big 3, whatever you want to call them. But ultimately, I do think that they have to come to an agreement. It's a matter of time. It's just, it's not a good look for anyone, and I hope it gets resolved as soon as possible.
Well, on that, on that rather somber note, but I do thoroughly agree. It needs to be resolved. Needs to be resolved quickly. It's just so people can continue to get paid and be happy, because happiness is what we're after. And on that, I'm very happy that we've had a wonderful podcast this week. If any of you want to get in touch with us, send us a nice email and tell us how wonderful we've been. Feel free to send an email to contact@InsideEVs.com and tell the folk back at head office that we're brilliant. Or if you have comments or any questions, feel free and we'll get back to them. We'll talk about them next week. Next week we'll all be back, and I believe we might have Mr. Patrick George as well. I don't know, maybe. But you have been listening today to Miss Go Electric herself, Lacey. The lovely Hazel Southwell, the wonderful Hazel Southwell, and me, Alex Goy. We will see you, hear from you, and speak at you next week. Thanks very much for listening, and goodbye. Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.